Thank you. First, I want to thank the organizer for the invitation to give a talk in this workshop. The work I'm going to present you is motivated by some classical observation that when you are considering real data sets that are usually represented by point clouds or even point clouds with pairwise distances between the points that can be represented as metric spaces, it often happens that these data are not randomly distributed, but have some tendency to concentrate around some geometric structure. And in particular, in some cases, they are concentrated around some one-dimensional filamentary structure. For example, if you, here are a few examples. So, for example, this data set represents a set of GPS coordinates sampled by a car in a town that have been recorded by car around the town. So the points are sampled around the road on the street network of the town, and you get something that looks like kind of filamentary graph structure. Here you have another example, which is this data set represents the coordinates of epicenters of some earthquakes. So in general, epicenter of earthquakes has tendency to be more frequent along some faults. So as you can see in this data, there is some kind of linear structure underlying it. And here is another example, is 3D example, which is coming from astrophysics. When you look at the distribution of matter in the universe, it is known that the matter is not distributed uniformly in the universe, and in particular, you can highlight some kind of filamentary structure like the one which is plotted here. I'm not going to give any details, but the idea is that it quite often happens that when you look at data, these data are concentrated around some one-dimensional structures that are not manifold, but have some branching points that look like metric graphs. And the problem I want to consider today is to know whether it's possible, when you get your data, to recover this underlying structure of metric graph from your approximating data. So just to make the problem a little bit more formal, what we are going to do is that we are going to suppose that we have a metric space, Y, so you can see, it's, in general, your metric space is your input data, so it can be a finite space with a a distance matrix that gives you the distance, pairwise distances between the points, but it can be some other, you can think of some other metric spaces. And what we are going to assume is that we are going to assume that this metric space is close in some sense to some unknown metric graph X. And what I mean here by a metric graph, you have to, I really think of graph as a topological object, not as a combinatorial object. So you have to think of a graph as a metric graph as a graph seen as with edges, where edges are homeomorphic to segments, and each edge has a length. So this endo your graph with a metric structure, and I'm really looking at this as a topological object, as a topological space. Another way to define it is to see it as a stratified one-dimensional space, but it's not really important. The idea here is that we really look at graph as topological spaces, not as combinatorial. And what we want to do is, from this input, we want to try to find a way to construct a metric graph, X hat, that is close, and if possible, homeomorphic to the underlying graph we don't know. And moreover, we also want to be able to project our data, initial data, Y, onto this reconstructed graph in such a way that we almost preserve pairwise distances between points. So in some sense, we try to parameterize our data almost isometrically using a metric graph. And what I'm going to do, in fact, in this talk is I'm going to just to present you a few geometric and topological ideas that are very simple, that allow to address this problem. And I'm going to focus on two different approaches. But before presenting these approaches, I just want to make something precise. I've been talking about closeness between metric spaces or between metric graphs. So I need to define what I have in mind when I'm talking about close object, such close topological space. And what we are going to use to compare these metric spaces we are dealing with is the so-called Gromov-Hausdorff distance. So one way to define the Gromov-Hausdorff distance is through the notion of correspondence. So when you have two spaces x and y, a correspondence between two spaces is just a subset of the product of the two spaces, such that for every point in one of the two spaces, you have at least one point in the second space that corresponds to this point. So you can say that for any point x in X, you have a point, you can find a point y in Y, such that the pair xy is contained in this subset C, and vice versa. And then you say that this correspondence is an epsilon correspondence if it has the additional property that when you take two pairs of points xy and x prime y prime, the distance in X between x and x prime does not differ more than epsilon from the distance between y and y prime in Y. So this means that if you take 2 points in X and you take 2 corresponding points in Y, and when you compare, you look at the distance between these 2 points in X or in Y, you see almost the same thing up to epsilon. And you define the Gromov-Hausdorff distance between your spaces in the following way. You say this is just the infimum, or 1/2 of the infimum of the epsilon, such that you can find an epsilon correspondence between these two spaces. This is a way to define distances between topological metric spaces or compact metric spaces without having to embed your spaces in some other space, ambient space, where you can compare the distances. Okay, so let me start with the first approach to try to address the graph reconstruction problem. And it's just follow a very simple idea. It's a kind of approach based on the local topology of a graph. The idea is that when you want to know the local topology of a metric graph, if you have a metric graph, what you just need to do is that for each point, you need to know the degree of the point. So the degree of the point is that you just need to know if you are on an edge. The local topology of a graph is that if you are on an edge, you look like a segment, and if you are at a vertex, you might look like a tripod if the degree is 3 or something, or if you are at an endpoint, like just a half segment, something like that. So if you are on a graph, one way to get the degree of a point on a metric graph is that you can choose a very small intrinsic ball. So you don't have to think of this object as embedded into the plane or in some space. These are intrinsic metric objects. So what you can do is that when you are at a point on a metric graph, you can look at, if you choose a sufficiently small ball, or in particular a sufficiently small sphere, you can look at the points that are in this small sphere, and the number of points you have is exactly the degree of the point you are considering, right? So now the idea is that if you don't have x, but you have an approximation y of x, if you want to try to guess the degree of a point in y, what you can do is that obviously you can't just look at one sphere, but you can replace the sphere by some spherical shell. So you thicken a little bit the sphere, and you look at the points that are in this spherical shell, like it's done here. And the idea is that you're going to get some set of points. And the point is that as you are looking at the intrinsic metric on this data set, the distance, this point is going to be clusterized. And the distance between the cluster is going to be at least something like 2 times the radius, the inner radius of your spherical shell. So the idea is that you can define, if you choose a parameter r, a radius r, you can define a degree, the r degree of a point in your approximating data just by looking at a spherical shell of center r and inner radius r and outer radius, let's say, for example, something a little bit larger than r, for example, 2r or 5r over 3. And you do some single linkage clustering to this intersection, and you look at the number of clusters, and you get a number which is what we call the r degree of the point in the approximating data. And the idea is that if this point in the approximated data is in relation to a vertex in X, or is not far to a point which is in relation to a vertex, then you will get something that is going to be different from 2. Because the vertices of X are the point with degree 1 or larger than 2. points with degree 2 are the points that are along the edges of the graph. So this gives rise to a very simple algorithm. I'm not going to give some details, but just the idea. So using this notion of R degree, so you can start with your input data, your approximating data. You choose a parameter R, and you do the following. First, you make a partition of your data set into edge point and vertices point. So for each point y in your initial data, you compute the R degree. If the R degree is equal to 2, you label your point as an edge point. And if it's different from 2, you label it as a vertex point. And in this way, you get a partition of your data of this kind, where some points are identified as vertex point, and some others are identified as edge point. And then the idea is very simple. You look at this partition, and you clusterize each of these partitions. And, for example, using a single linkage clustering, a very simple clustering algorithm. And what you get, and the idea is now, for example, for the set of vertex points, you get a certain number of clusters, and each cluster is going to become a vertex of the graph you are going to reconstruct, of x hat. And each cluster in the set of edge point is going to be identified to an edge. And now you can recreate the connectivity between the vertices and edges just by saying that you put an edge between two vertex clusters if they are adjacent in some sense to one edge cluster. Okay, so this is roughly the idea. And then you can reconstruct the metric just by assigning a length to each edge. And this length is roughly the diameter of the corresponding edge cluster you have here. There are some technical details, but the idea is just that. And it's very easy. And the nice point is that when you follow this simple process, at the end you get an algorithm that comes with theoretical guarantee. And the theoretical guarantee are that if you start from a space y, which is an epsilon approximation of x, which this means that the Gromov-Hausdorff distance between y and the unknown underlying graph is less than some epsilon. If you call b the length of the shortest edge of the unknown graph x, you have the following result, is that if you are able to choose R in a sufficiently clever way, and the sufficiently clever means that it has to be well chosen with respect to the parameter epsilon and the parameter b, then you have the algorithm is going to output a graph which is going to be homomorphic to the underlying graph. So you have the correct topology. It's going to be almost isometric to the underlying graph. This means that you can prove that there exists a map between your constructing metric graph and the underlying graph, which is almost an isometry. And you even have a map, an embedding map of your data into the reconstructed graph that almost preserve distances, pairwise distances. So this looks like a nice result because it comes with guarantee, but it suffers some problem. It's not very practical result in the sense that you have this kind of, you need some sampling assumption here, which is that you have to choose a parameter R. And the right choice of the parameter R depends on some quantities that in general you don't know. This is epsilon, the quality of your approximation of your underlying graph, and also some geometric information about your underlying graph, that is, in particular the length of the shortest edge. You don't know it in general. So I'm going to come back about on this problem in a few minutes. Before, I just want to show you just a few illustrations on how the algorithm works. So, for example, if you try to apply it to this GPS dataset, GPS traces dataset, it works pretty well because GPS are pretty precise device. You sample along a road network, which is clearly a linear structured object. And as you can see, you can recover pretty well the crossing of the road and the street. Things work pretty well, and you have moreover, you have an idea of the quality of the approximation and of the scale because you know that you work with a street network, so it's not too difficult to find the right R to get a correct reconstruction. Another example is the one with the earthquake data set. So what I did here is I took this set of epicenters, I preprocessed it to remove some outliers that were not in that were in low density areas, and then I applied to the remaining point the reconstruction algorithm, and this is what you get. You get a pretty correct reconstruction of the underlying linear structure. But to be honest, to get this picture, this reconstruction here, we have had to tweak quite a lot the parameter R. In some sense, we had to try many values of R until we find one that gives the correct reconstruction. So just to summarize what I've said, is that this simple algorithm gives rise to something that comes with theoretical guarantees, but we have this problem of choosing the parameter R. In general, we don't know how to do it in practice. And moreover, another bad point is that if you look at the algorithm a little bit more in details, if you are not satisfying the sampling condition of the theorem, it might happen that the algorithm not even output a graph. For example, it might happen that when you clusterize, that the cluster, an edge cluster, might be adjacent to more than two vertices. So this means that you would have an edge that is adjacent to 3 vertices. So when you start to have this kind of thing, you are not reconstructing a graph. So to overcome, so this is kind of a practical, important issue in practice. So to try to overcome this issue, what we did is that we reconsidered this metric graph reconstruction problem, but with a completely different approach, less local, and based upon some very basic ideas coming from metric geometry. And in fact, when you look at a metric graph, you can make a few remarks, basic remarks. One is that when you look at a graph locally, it's always a tree. If you restrict the graph to a small ball around a point, intrinsic ball, what you get, if you choose the radius of the ball smaller than the length or half of the length of the shortest loop in your graph, you get something which is a tree. So graphs locally or semi-locally looks like trees. And when you have trees, there is an interesting property of trees is that when you look at triangles or tetrahedra in trees, they always look like this. So geodesic triangles in trees are always tripods, and geodesic tetrahedra in trees are always like this, looks like this. They don't have any thickness. And this property is well known in metric geometry, and it's called zero hyperbolicity. So the idea here, with this remark in mind, was to try to use this property to design a different reconstruction graph or tree reconstruction algorithm. So to do that, we need to recall or to give the definition of hyperbolicity for a metric space. So when you have a metric space, you say that your space is delta hyperbolic for some value delta if each time you take 4 points in your space, x, y, z, and w, they define a tetrahedron. So in this tetrahedron, you can look at the sum of the length of the opposite edges. So for example, you can look at dxy plus dzw, dxw plus dzy, etc. So you get 3 numbers. And you say that your space is delta hyperbolic if when you look at the 2 largest numbers, they do not differ by more than 2 delta. So this is a definition of a delta hyperbolic space. And the point is that, in fact, metric trees, are zero hyperbolic. So when you take a tree and when you take 4 points in a tree, you look at the tetrahedra they define, and the 2 largest sum of the length of opposite edges are always equal. Right? And in fact, more interesting is that this is in fact a characterization of trees. You have to be careful of what is called real trees, but roughly the idea is that a metric space is a tree, or a path-connected metric space is a tree, if and only if it is zero hyperbolic. So in some sense, you can characterize tree through hyperbolicity. And the other interesting property of hyperbolicity is that this is a notion which is stable with respect to Gromov-Hausdorff distance, meaning that if two spaces x and y are at distance less than epsilon, it's very easy to check that if x is delta hyperbolic, y is going to be delta plus 2 epsilon hyperbolic. So when you think about this, you necessarily ask the following question: could we use delta hyperbolicity to characterize metric data sets that are close with respect to Gromov-Hausdorff distance to metric tree? But life is not so easy, and in general, the answer to this question is no. For example, if you think of the Poincaré disk, which does not look exactly like a tree or like a filamentary structure, it is log of 3 hyperbolic, which is a pretty low constant. So in some sense, you can say that if you have a delta hyperbolic space, it is close to some simple tree. So it's not sufficient to just to look at the delta hyperbolicity of a metric space to decide whether it is close or not from a tree. So it looks like bad news, but this is not because this is a bad news that we have to give up. And here we can incorporate a new idea, one more idea, which is the following: is that what I told you a few minutes ago is that with the previous method, we had an algorithm that was not always able to output a graph. We had this problem that sometimes it might crash, and here we had in mind that we wanted an algorithm that does not take as input a parameter we have to define or to set up, and we also want something that always output a graph or a tree. In such a, so an idea to construct a tree. So another idea to construct a tree from a metric space is to do the following. You can choose a point R in your metric space X, and you can look at the distance to a function to this point R you have chosen. And so this is a function which is defined on your space. And you can use this function to define an equivalence relation on your space, which is just the following. You say that 2 points x and y are equivalent if and only if they are the same distance of R, x and y are the same distance of R, and you can find a continuous path between x and y, which always remain at distance more than d of x from R. So in some sense, you ask x and y to be in the same level set of the function d, but also in the same connected component of the upper level set of d corresponding to d of x. Okay? So the interest of introducing this, so when you introduce this equivalence relation, you can look at the quotient of your space by this equivalence relation, and you get what is called, sometimes in the literature, the merge tree or persistence tree. And the interesting fact is that whatever the space you had at the beginning, if it's a path metric space, if it is path connected, you have the property that T, this object you construct, is always a tree. The leaves of this tree are in one-to-one correspondences with the local maxima of your distance function d. And you can also, and it also inherits a metric structure from X in the sense that you know the distance between the root of the tree and any point. And this is sufficient to define a metric on a tree. You just need to know the distance from one point to all the other, and you can extend this in a unique way into a metric onto the tree. So this construction gives us a tree, and in practice, this tree can be, if you start with some input data, finite input data, endowed with a neighboring graph, you can compute this tree very efficiently using a union find data structure. So that's a way to get a tree from a metric space. And the interesting property of this tree is that if at the beginning your initial space X was a metric tree, the tree that you are reconstructing is exactly T. So if you start from a tree, you get a tree. You get the same tree. So now the question is that, again, if now we don't have a tree for x, but we have a delta hyperbolic space, can we, in some sense, upper bound the distance between x and this reconstructed tree in terms of delta? And again, the answer is no, as previously. There is no surprise here. But if we add some extra quantity, we can get something interesting. So the extra quantity we have to consider is the following. We define another function on our space X, which is that every time you have a point X in X, you can associate it a point called Mx, which is a local maxima of D. And this is a maximum of the function D in the upper level set, in the connected component of the upper level set of D that contains X. Okay? So this Mx is not uniquely defined in general, but you can choose one. And you can define a function f of x, which is just the distance from R to x plus the distance from x to mx minus the distance from R to mx. In some sense, this is a detour you make when you go from R to mx through x instead of going directly from R to mx. So this function is very simple to compute, and in fact you can compute it as you construct the tree T in practice very efficiently. And the point is that now we have a result that tells us that if m is the maximum of our function f we have just introduced, and if x is delta hyperbolic, now we are able to upper bound the distance between x and the merged tree, or the persistent tree. And this upper bound is 9 times delta, so the hyperbolicity has some influence on the quality of the reconstruction. And we have this extra term that in some sense measure the width of the connected component of the level set of D. And moreover, the projection from X to T, the canonical projection, is almost an isometry. It has some controlled metric distortion. So I'm just going to skip. I want to finish with a few practical considerations. So now the idea is that when X is a neighboring graph built on top of some finite data, we have seen that T, the projection of Y onto T, and M can be computed efficiently from the data using a union-find data structure. And in fact, the algorithm is almost linear in the number of edges of your neighboring graph. The second, on another hand, the delta, the quantity delta, can also be computed from the data, because in some sense, if you do it naively, you just have to test for all tetrahedra the value of delta, and you take the max. In fact, you can improve this in different ways. I'm not going to explain that. It's not very difficult to. The complexity is a little bit high, but you can improve this to get some better things. And what we got at the end is an algorithm that always output a tree. So whatever the input we have, we always get a tree. And with the output, we also get an upper bound on the distance between the reconstructed tree and our initial data. So if this upper bound is good, we can be happy. And if it's not, we can decide that maybe our data is not close to a tree or something like that. So the point here is that we have a posteriori way to control the quality of what we did, which is very different from the setting we had before. And maybe just quickly to finish, another point is that the problem here, let me skip to, so this algorithm is very simple and efficient. It does not take any parameter as input. As soon as we have our input graph built on top of the data, we just have to run a union find, and we don't have to set some parameter to decide anything. So it's a good point. And in some sense, you can also use it when you have a graph and not a tree for your data. You can locally look at your graph as a tree, and you can try to cover your graph with some trees and with a forest or something like that. And in some sense, you can explore your data or parameterize locally your data by trees. You don't get global graphs, but you can parameterize them by trees. But in fact, this last inconvenience that you don't get a global graph can be overcome in the following way. I'm just mentioning it quickly, that you can, what we just did for trees, you can do it for graphs by replacing the persistence tree or the merge tree by the RIB graph, which is just, you modify a little bit the equivalence relation. You just say that 2 points are equivalent if they are in the same connected component of a level set of G. So what you get as a quotient is no longer a tree, but a graph. And you can prove, using exactly the same techniques as the one I mentioned for trees, that you reconstruct a graph and you can get an upper bound on the distance between the graph and the input data. So for example, here is an example, just to finish, last slide, is that you get the output of this algorithm with RIB graph on the earthquake data set. And here this has been obtained without choosing any parameter, except that we have built from the data a neighboring graph, and then we run the algorithm, and we get this graph, which is topologically correct, which is correct, or which seems to be a good approximation of the underlying structure. Okay, so I stop. Thank you.
Very much.